you how the acquisition came together, but you filmed a documentary in true ProfitWell fashion, giving us all a behind-the-scenes look at the acquisition. I'm super curious, like, where did that idea come from, and then how hard was it to pull this off, given this is a highly sensitive, transaction that was happening?
So one of the reasons, without getting we did a documentary on it, and without getting into like the deal stuff, I mean, you can hit me up on it. I think you've probably listened to a podcast or two where I've talked through it. Like, I think that one of the biggest things we learned is, again, this is the bootstrap mentality, is we're going to de-risk as many big money decisions as possible. And one of the things that we figured out, for example, events, like if we spend 6 figures to sponsor a big event, we know like there's ROI there, but it's still 6 figures plus. It could be $250,000, right? Yeah. So what we ended up doing is we would be like, great, we're going to schedule a ton of podcast interviews where like I'm going to actually interview people at the event. We're going to do a talk. We're going to do a bunch of other stuff for like activations to bring people to the booth. We're going to do all this kind of stuff. But the worst case scenario is we have 10 podcast episodes of people, all the speakers are already there. They're sitting around waiting for their talk, all that kind of stuff, right? So that was kind of our mindset. So going into the deal, the way we kind of did this is like we did a bunch of like deal stuff, myself and Facundo, our head of product and co-founder. And then like we brought together like the top 10, I don't want to say top 10, but the 10 like core people at ProfitWell, like mostly the managers, mostly the leaders. And we had them like, debate it, figure out like, what they thought, because we were going to make the ultimate decision. But if they were all against the decision, like we were going to talk about it or maybe not do it. Okay. But the reason I bring that up is because Dan, our head of Recur, was one of those people. And I told him, I said, okay, we had decided to go through with it. And I said, we need to film as much as humanly possible to de-risk like this. Like worst case scenario, we are going to publish a documentary on our own, and like it'll be good content of how like acquisition failed, right? Like, and we'll get eyeballs, right? And so I started recording a bunch of stuff. And then what's kind of cool is Andrew, the CMO of Paddle, like one of the big reasons that they one of the big selling points was our media arm, was like how good we were at this stuff, because they basically sell to the same, if not very similar type of customer, right? As we do. And so he was already like working on this himself of like, hey, we should do this, and pushing for it. He's the one who really gets all the credit for the documentary here, because we did a lot of stuff with our internal teams, but we hired I think his official title is like a documentarian to actually come in and like, film everything. And then Andrew was the one who like went through the revisions and, it's not a documentary as in like even Ken Burns' documentary have editorial in them. Like it obviously like there's stuff that we cut, but there's a lot of stuff that like, the actual voice memo where I sent to Christian and I said, this is the number. If you can't get to this number, like we're done. And like, that's real. Like that's a real thing that's in there. Right. And so we definitely like, wanted to show the whole story and be vulnerable with it. But I think that's like what I told Andrew after we published it, and like, obviously a lot of people love it and all that kind of stuff. We did a couple of in-person screenings, was that it's not even the number of people who watched it. It's the fact that we did it. And that's what's interesting about some of this content. Once you get to like the 201, 301 level of media, like another thing that I did was, I don't know if you saw it, but I said the word churn 100,000 times in one sitting in a video.
I did see that.
Yeah, it was 9 hours and 3 minutes. Like I just said churn for 9 hours, one take in front of a camera. That's the type of thing, like there's these WTF things that I mentioned. Like there's like, that's a WTF thing. The documentary is like WTF. Like they filmed a documentary. Like it's these types of things that like increase your brand like aura, which as a numbers guy is like kind of terrifying, because I was like, I can't track every dollar, that came in there, but like it just boosts the brand so much more powerfully. And that's the reason we did it, is one, to hedge things, but also to like, like make something really, really powerful kind of stand out.